Hi, I'm Craig. This is Everyday Makers. Sometimes I watch other people's videos and they're really, really cool, and I see all kinds of stuff that I want to do and that I think is really, really neat. But sometimes I feel like the only kid on the block that doesn't have a giant wooden mallet. Until now. Okay, today we're going to build a mallet. These are the big wood mallets people use for chisels and things like that all the time. Real handy thing to have around the shop. And just a fun toy. So I'm measuring these slats to 8-inch chunks of the big ones. And I'm splitting this in half. It's a 2-foot piece, splitting that in half. The 8-inch chunks are going to be for the head of the hammer, and the 12-inch pieces are going to be for the handle. Just going to break all this down. I'm having 4 8-inch pieces and 2 12-inch pieces. Okay, now comes a little bit more measuring. The handle pieces are 1.5 inches wide by 3/4 inch. The head pieces are 8 inches by 3.5 inches. So I got to do the math of, to put a handle in the middle of that, 8 inches minus 1.5 inches equals 6.5 inches. So I'm going to have 6.5 inches worth of total oak left in the middle of it. So I adjust my combination square and mark a line. Because I'm doing this as a glue up, I don't have to mortise anything. I can cut chunks, glue them in place. It's perfect. Way easier than making a mortise. And as I'm looking at this, it doesn't seem right. I have measured to 2¼ inches, not 3¼ inches. Perfect example of measure twice, cut once. So after verifying that I'm incorrect, then I can go through and remeasure those and strike a couple new lines. Verifying that it is 8 inches like I thought it was. And now redoing my math. 8 inches minus 1.5 inches gives me 6.5. Then divide that by 2 gives you 3¼ inches. And that's where I screwed up. I just made a mistake on the combination square. So I'll restrike a new line. And take them over and cut. Might have saw him make such quick and easy work of this. So I got my 4 pieces. Now the way this all lays out is, like I said, since we're not doing a mortise, I'm doing 2 pieces that I'm going to glue on either side of the handle pieces. After cleaning those up, then I can start laying everything out. This bottle of glue is just about empty, but just refuses to die. So, start the glue up. Got quite a bit of glue on there, so I figure I'll share a little bit to the next piece. Add a little bit more. Put it in place. And all my grain in this is running the same direction. And do the same thing on the next piece, trying to get the glue as evenly spread around as possible. After all, this is going to be a hammer, so it's going to take some force. Cleaning up a little bit of early squeeze out. When I'm mocking this up, I'm going to put the handle in the middle, so I don't want any extra glue squeeze out in the middle because I don't want it to get stuck in place. So I fit everything, fit the two halves. The handle pieces are the same size. So I fit the two halves, stack a little weight on it, let it sit for a little while. Now that the glue is halfway dry, I've also taken the opportunity to glue together the two handle pieces while that was drying. Once the glue got a little bit stiff on the two head pieces, it gave me a little freedom to take the handle out and continue working. So I got the handle glued up. Everything's pretty well dry. I'm going to put a mark at 1 inch. But then the more I look at it, probably 1.5 inches is better. Because I'm already planning to cut off the very ends of this just to clean them up. And so I've got more space than I need. So for the pommel, the end part that goes under your hand, under the heel of your hand, that part is going to end up being about 1 inch tall. And then the part that goes through the head, I need 3.5 inches. I'm going to give it 4, so I've got a little bit out top and a little bit out the bottom. Put marks on all 4 sides. Now we break out the router. I have a 1/2 inch round over bit. This is basically, I'm going to make a handle. And I'm going to leave the top and bottom square and just route out the middle section. So I'll do a little plunge cut on the line and then move it down to the next line. And do that on all 4 sides. Nice and easy, move it along. If I do that on all 4 sides, it gives me a mostly round handle that actually feels really good in the hand, and then gives me a square top and bottom just for a little bit of a nicer look, more finished look. Gonna clean up a little bit. Routers make such a mess. They're by far the worst. And we'll do a little more test fitting, make sure that everything's good. And I can kind of look a little bit at what I got as far as the sticking out the top and then the little bit in the bottom. Pretty good fit all around. And now I'm getting ready for the glue up of the main 2 halves. And the handle will not glue in place. The handle will be compression fit. So I just want the 2 top halves of the head to glue together in the right orientations. The left open square in the middle, the handle will slide in. So I'm going to use the handle basically as a guide to keep everything together. This little silicone brush is one of the greatest things ever. It's got a little flat piece on the end. Allows you just to kind of scrape off a nice clean line of glue. Like on that, I didn't want it too close to the channel in the middle. So clean that right up. So use that to line it up. Put the 2 halves together. And it's a little bit tighter than I'd like. So I'm going to see if it's just not lined up right for some reason. And it's just still more difficult than I want it to be. So while I still have time to work with it, pull the halves back apart, clean off my little bit of glue from where it contacted it. Then I'm going to break out the sanding block. A little bit of sanding on the inside here, it's really close, but I just want to open it up just a little bit more, and a sanding block will do a great job for that. put the two halves together. Beautiful. It's almost like I meant to do it. And the alignment of the two halves isn't quite as critical right now because we're going to end up saw cutting them flush. So as long as it's fairly close, we're good. So now put a clamp on it, hold it nice and tight. Another clamp for the other side. And once they're held tight in place, then I'm going to work the handle back out. Because I want those glued together, but not with the handle in. And now we can let it dry. While it's drying, I'm going to work on the handle a little bit, just kind of cleaning everything up. I want the corners just basically softened, but not gone. I want the corners top and bottom. And then the handle itself, I'm just going to try and basically ease that over and get rid of any of the lines from the router. Make it a little more evenly round. It's still got a fairly squared handle to it, just with the corners rounded over, and it actually feels really good in the hand. Not too huge, not too skinny. Now I'm going to get out my dowels. I'm using a poplar handle, and I've got poplar dowels. And we're going to put a dowel through the base of the handle, the bottom pommel portion. It's a 1/4 inch hole we got to drill for a 1/4 inch dowel. And I'm going to start where I want it. And I'm going to grab a little accessory. This is the drill block. Very handy little item. Make sure that your holes are drilled completely perpendicular and straight. And it also actually has a groove in the back so you can set it on a corner and drill a corner hole. Or you can set it on a piece of tubing or something and drill through that. It's a pretty handy little item. And I think less than $10. It was a pretty great purchase. And a little bit of glue on the end of the dowel. And once you get it glued up, and we'll get that dowel put in. Just going to use the end of my chisel. And it is a tight fit. I always forget that there is no extra wiggle room on these dowels. And that's what happens when there's no extra wiggle room on the dowels. So, pound a little bit further in wherever I can get it. And I looked, and it's about 3/4 of the way through. So there's only about a 1/4 inch left on the other side. So it made it past the middle, which is the only real requirement, is it has to make it past the middle to keep the two halves held extra together. So I'm shaving off the tip to make it a little bit pointier, make it a little bit easier to get through the hole. And I'm going to do the same thing from the other side. A little bit of glue. And this side is just to make it aesthetically pleasing. It's the solidness of the first dowel will hold everything together. The second side just makes it match. This one doesn't really have to go very far. Like I said, it was probably a 1/4 inch from the end, maybe. And we'll let it dry. Now that it's dried up a little bit, enough to work with, take the little Japanese pull saw it nice and flush. Remember with the pull saw, you want to leave yourself a little 1/16 of an inch or whatever, just a little bit extra. You don't want to actually saw into your wood of your main part, because you're easily going to be able to sand that later. And I'm going to clean up my ends on the miter saw. This is basically just taking the ends off. And now back from the miter saw, I got fresh cut ends. Now I'm going to take the router, same 1/4 inch round over bit. I'm going to go over the ends here. And this turned out to be an absolutely terrible idea. I got really, really horrible tear out all the way around. That was the first time I tried that. It seemed like it would work. It did not. So on the top side, since it's going to be barely even sticking out of the top, I'm going to go ahead and just clean that up, make it look a little bit nicer, no biggie. The top side actually didn't have nearly as much tear out as the bottom side did. The bottom side was pretty rough. You can see right there that the tear out's pretty bad. So there's only so much I can do to clean that up. So back to the miter saw. Turns out I could do it just below where I've got that dowel put in, and basically took care of all the main problems. It shortened up my pommel end just a little bit, but it's not too bad. It went from a little bit over 1 inch to probably 1/2 inch. Still gives the look. So after cleaning those up on the sander, and this time I use the sander more as a shaper just to round everything over instead of requiring the router again. And now I'm going to check this. This should be dry. Or dry enough to work with, that is. There's a good amount of glue on there, but it feels really solid. So, we're going to head over to the table saw. This basically, we're going to true up all the sides. We are taking off like a saw blade's width, not much of anything. There really won't be any pieces per se coming off this. This will be sawdust, ideally. Because you want it basically just to take off any glue squeeze out and just to true up the edges. So I sent it through. Didn't have the blade up quite high enough. Send it through again. Same thing. Raise it up one more time. Send it through, and it's beautiful. So now we'll adjust the saw again. Bringing our fence in just a little bit. We're basically just kind of eyeballing this, getting as close as possible. It's really pretty easy to do. Just take your time. Send it through, and beautiful. Nice square sides. Now we're going to break out the miter gauge. This we're just going to set to 90 degrees, just nice square cuts. And we're going to take off the ends. And same thing, just slide it along and barely just take off a blade width, and that's about it. You want to leave as much meat as possible while still truing up the sides. Beautiful. Barely had any tear out or anything. Now blade down for safety. And over to the miter saw. On the miter saw, this we're basically going to give it kind of a heavy chamfer around both of the striking ends. So first I adjusted 10 degrees and I kind of looked at it, and 10 degrees just wasn't enough to get the look I was going for. So I went to 35 degrees. 35, I did 4 cuts, one in each side, or one in each end there, and then I increased the depth of cut. So basically on one end I just did a slight chamfer. On the other end, I did a real heavy chamfer that made it more of a pointy end. And you can see the two different looks and two different sides. Gives it two completely different looks, two completely different functions. And it's a lot more interesting than just a block. So, down for a final sand. And this, once again, I'm basically putting a little chamfer on the edges, just real minor. Making a little room. And what I'm doing here is I'm going to put dowels through. I'm going to use those poplar dowels again, so they'll have a nice contrast. And they'll match the handle, but not match the oak head. And so they'll have a nice contrast and look really good. But for this, I'm doing this also for strength. Since this is a glue-up project, something going across all four pieces is helpful for structure. So I'm going to put a total of 6 dowels in, 3 on each end. And I would probably take a lot more time and measure everything out if this was something that I was selling or something like that, but just for a shop project, as long as they're fairly close, I'm good with it. It's a handmade item and I'm okay with that. And then this time, I'm going to learn from my previous issue, and I'm actually going to widen those out a little bit. So I'm just going to use my drill bit, just kind of move the drill around a little bit and widen them out. This will give it so that the dowels will slide through a little bit easier and actually get more glue around them. So it should hold quite a bit better, and it'll be easier to get in without breaking. And I'm going to prep the top part of the handle to receive a dowel also. And this dowel will be used as a spreader that'll help keep tension on it so it stays in the head. It's very directly related to when people use like wedges and things like that. Okay. I'm going to put glue down in each of the holes, doing 3 at a time. And I'm going to drive the dowels down through. Like I said, these are poplar dowels, just prefab ones I bought at the home improvement store. Drive them in, then use the pole saw to cut them off. Same thing on the other side. Glue up. And I'm not soaking the holes at all. I'm just putting enough glue to where it kind of oozes down in. The dowels will push it down. And driving 3 dowels in again. And this one stuck on me. It got most of the way through and then stopped. So I had to do a little surgery like I did on the handle and started through the other side. There was already glue in the hole, so it wasn't a problem. And structure-wise, 5 out of 6 dowels being all the way through is plenty. So sand the ends flush. Get it looking nice. And now we're ready for a handle. And I crossed my grains on this. My 2 pieces of poplar for the handle, I turned 90 degrees from the 4 pieces of oak that I had. So the seams are going different directions. And and I pounded it just past flush of the top. There's probably less than a 1/4 inch sticking out the top. And now I'll drive one more dowel on the top. And this is used basically as a spreader, so I'm going to go ahead and take the sander and just kind of round it over a little bit. Make it a little pointier so it goes down in easier. And this will be my wedge in the top. It's a very, very tight fit as is. And so this wedge should be just enough to hold it in place without a whole lot of trouble. Same routine. Saw flush. Hit with the sander. Clean up a little bit of squeeze out that I had there. Solid as a rock. Heck of a hammer. And now our finish. We're going to use Howard Beeswax and orange oil. This is a new product to me. I know that a billion other people use it, so it's not anything new on the market or anything. It's just new to me. So I figured this would be a great project to try it out on. And I really like how it brings out the color. It really has done a great job on that. I was very impressed. So basically what I've got out of this one is you put it on real thick. You want it to be just like gooey on the outside of your project. You don't want to worry about working it all in. Just keep it massaging around, but you don't have to worry about every single bit of it being off the piece. You want a little layer of ooze on the outside. And when it dries, you let that soak in. Then once it gets a little crust on it, then you wipe off the excess. And once you wipe off the excess, this is what you get. Hey, thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. It's a fun project, a relatively simple thing. I know I'm going to get some use out of it. I've been beating my chisels with big metal hammers, and that's not great for them. It'll be a nice little addition to the shop, and it looks really awesome. Yeah, don't forget, like, subscribe, reshare. We appreciate you watching the videos, and we'd love to have you for some more. Go check out the videos that are off to the side here, and there'll be more stuff coming up. Hopefully more stuff that interests you. So if you like this one, hopefully you've got some in the back catalog that interests you. If not, don't forget to subscribe so you'll see more stuff coming up. Thanks again for watching our videos.